What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everyone's doing well out there. Today we're talking about our quarterback and tight end rankings here for Week 17 fantasy football. Now this is going to be our last ranking show of the week unless you're a member, right? Because members get flex rankings, kicker rankings, and defense rankings as well. Now just because the fantasy football season is almost over doesn't mean it's too late to become a member. We do things for members all year long, not just live streams. I'll actually drop random Zoom links and I'll just sit there and chill with you and talk with you at times throughout the off season. Plus you're gonna get access to Discord and other bonus videos. It's a lot of fun to have all year long, so consider becoming a member if you haven't already by hitting that little blue join button here right underneath the video. But now is the time to dive into some quarterback rankings, and at number 1 this week, it's Jalen Hurts. And I don't know about you, but Jalen Hurts going up against the Arizona Cardinals in a must-win game for Philadelphia to fight for that number 1 overall seed, that's why I got him at number 1. Number 2, it's Lamar Jackson, Baltimore Ravens in a matchup going up against Miami, the AFC number 1 seed versus the AFC number 2 seed. Lamar can basically all but lock it up here this week at home against Miami, so he's at number 2. Number 3, it's Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills in a matchup going up against New England. It's easier to throw on New England than it is to run on New England, and even though at times this Buffalo offense looks disgusting, Josh Allen each and every week continues to go out and score fantasy points, and he's the number 1 overall quarterback on the year. He's at number 3 this week. Number 4, it's Dak Prescott in a game going up against Detroit. These two teams play on Saturday, but they're also fighting for that number 1 overall seed in the NFC. They want to win this ball game. They have something to play for, so Dak's at 4. Number 5, it's going to be Brock Purdy, and a lot of people pissed off that Brock Purdy struggled last week against Baltimore. Well, don't worry, if you're in the fantasy championships, he's got a great way to redeem himself going up against the Washington Commandos, one of the worst defenses in all of football. Then we go down to number 6. This is where I have Justin Fields in a matchup going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Justin Fields, another one of those guys that has that rushing upside that gives him the safer floor, so he's at number 6. Number 7, Matthew Stafford, arguably one of, if not the hottest offense right now in the NFL, going up against the New York Giants on the road in New York. But this is another one of those matchups where Matthew Stafford can go ham with either Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp, so he's at 7. 8, this is where I have Patrick Mahomes going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, Mahomes not a top 5 guy anymore, but he's still going out each and every week scoring right around 17 to 18 fantasy points, and in a matchup here going up against Cincinnati at home in Kansas City, I got him at 8. Number 9, it's Kyler Murray, Arizona Cardinals, a great matchup for him going up against Philadelphia. The problem is Kyler Murray really doesn't have any wide receivers to throw the ball to consistently. He's really reliant on a bunch of randoms out there catching touchdowns, and he could be higher in these rankings if he had Hollywood Brown, but for right now, he's at number 9. Number 10, it's the Bake Show. Baker Mayfield, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going up against the New Orleans Saints. The last time these two faced off, Baker had a great day. No Marshawn Lattimore this week, which means Mike Evans could feast, so Baker's at 10. 11, it's Derek Carr of the New Orleans Saints. I wanted to put him higher. Everything says that Derek Carr could have a huge game this week going up against Tampa Bay. But because numerous times this season we've seen Derek Carr lay an egg, I had to temper expectations slightly to put him at 11. Number 12, it's Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions in that must-win matchup going up against Dallas on Saturday. 14, his opponent in that game is Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers going up against Minnesota. Sounds like he could have back Jaden Reed this week, which is great news because Dontavian Wicks is still questionable, as well as Christian Watson, who's basically been questionable the entire year. So Love's at 14. 15, this is where I put Tua in that matchup going up against Baltimore. Baltimore took it to San Francisco last week, so we obviously have to limit expectations for Tua, who himself hasn't really had the highest ceiling over the last 4 to 6 weeks, but this offense just cannot stay healthy. Whether it's Devon Achane or Tyreek Hill or now Jalen Waddle, they always seem to be missing one of their big-time playmakers, so we dropped Tua to 15. 16, it's Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks going up against Pittsburgh. You just never know what Pittsburgh defense is going to show up, but with all the weapons that Geno has, he's at 16. 17 is Joe Flacco. I would honestly love to put Joe Flacco a little bit higher, but this matchup sucks going up against the Jets, and Amari Cooper is questionable to play, so I got Flacco at 17. 18, this is where I put CJ Stroud. Now, technically, he's still in the concussion protocol, but he's limited in practice right now, which means he's on his way to making a comeback. If he can play 100% full go against Tennessee, he's going to climb up inside my top 12. Until we get that clearance, he's sitting at 18. 19, it's Easton Stick of the Los Angeles Chargers in a matchup going up against Denver on the road in Denver. Now, we're still waiting to see whether or not we have Keenan Allen this week, but Easton Stick continues to go out and start to show a little bit of rushing upside, which definitely helps bring that floor up as well, so he's at 19. 20, it's Jake Browning, a very difficult matchup going up against Kansas City. Kansas City held Aiden O'Connell last week to like 60 yards passing. This is a great overall defense in Kansas City, plus this game is on the road in Arrowhead, so Browning's at 20. 21, it's Gardner Minshew, another difficult matchup going up against Las Vegas, a Las Vegas defense that just limited Patrick Mahomes. Plus, we don't even know if Minshew's going to have Michael Pittman or not yet, so he's at 21. 22, it's now Jarrett Stidham, starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos. The only reason he's in these rankings is because of the matchup he has going up against the Chargers. The Chargers allow some of the most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Plus, I wouldn't put it past Sean Payton to go out there and do whatever he possibly could to put this offense in a position to score points so he can turn around and point the finger at Russell Wilson. So Stidham's at 22. 23, it's Mason Rudolph, Pittsburgh Steelers in a matchup going up against Seattle. Not a bad matchup for Mason Rudolph, but was last week just a fluke, or is Mason Rudolph actually good right now? Because we haven't seen it with any consistency, and his day was really attributed to two big George Pickens plays, I got Mason Rudolph at 23, and then at 24, this is where I put Trevor Lawrence. A lot of unknowns surrounding Trevor Lawrence right now. He's dealing with an AC joint sprain in his throwing shoulder, and he's playing one of the most difficult matchups there is against the Carolina Panthers, who have done nothing but defend the passing game well all year long. With all those question marks and really the uncertainty with the injury concerns, I got him at 24 as of right now. Which will then wrap up our top 24 quarterbacks for the week, but we're not done yet. Now it's time to talk about tight ends, the football kind, and throw it over to Kyle.
Yo, what's up, Headliner Nation? For the tight end position, we definitely have been up and down all season long in terms of the production that they have offered us. And even though we're heading into week 17 with another major injury at the position from TJ Hockenson, we do have some guys who have come on strong at the end of the season. Travis Kelce has by far the best matchup of the week, and we've got a few streaming options that could be really helpful for us as well. So if there was ever a time for the tight end position to ball out, it would be right now. So let's go ahead and hop into my top 18 tight ends for week 17, and I can tell you right now, I'm only talking about 18 because anybody outside of that isn't even worth mentioning. So let's go ahead and dive into it. And at number one, I already told you it's going to be Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce at number one, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals that allow the second most fantasy points to the tight end position. Absolutely. Let's lock it in. Trey McBride didn't live up to his number 2 ranking last week, but he's still got plenty of targets to potentially hit that. Just not enough big plays. And knowing this is going to be a shootout against a Philadelphia secondary that absolutely can get torched at times, Trey McBride goes right back up to number 2 again for me this week. George Kittle has a great matchup against Washington. My only concern is how early does San Francisco get a lead, and if George Kittle doesn't see a ton of targets because of that. David Njoku going up against New York at number 4 on Thursday night. Now the New York Jets do allow the second fewest passing yards in the NFL. But to the tight end position, they're right in the middle of the pack in fantasy points allowed. Cleveland's going to have to throw the football. That's all they've been doing as of recent. And David Njoku, with tough matchups on the outside for the wide receivers, could have himself another really solid day. Jake Ferguson at number 5 going up against Detroit. Detroit has had trouble against the pass as of recent, especially the tight end position. They're in the bottom third of most fantasy points allowed to tight ends this year. Go ahead and give me Jake Ferguson in a matchup that should be smashing a lot of overs. And Isaiah Likely going up against Miami, another really good matchup for Isaiah Likely. Last week, decent week, didn't find the end zone, which really brought his upside down. But this week going up against Miami, expect Baltimore to have to throw the football and Isaiah Likely to be on the receiving end of quite a few targets. Sam Laporta going up against Dallas at number 7. I just don't love his upside. Dallas allows the 7th fewest fantasy points to the tight end position. He's going to get himself a few targets, but how high is the ceiling for him? It just isn't as high as some of the people people above him. And really the same thing for Evan Ingram. Is he going to get quite a few targets? Absolutely. Him and Sam Laporta have that in common. They're going to get the targets this week, but both of their matchups absolutely suck. And because of that, I just can't give them a higher ranking than the higher upside guys. Dallas Goedert going up against Arizona, definitely going to be a good opportunity for Dallas Goedert, who has 8 targets in back-to-back games. But again, where does Philadelphia lie in terms of game script? Do they get an early lead? Do they not have to throw the ball as much? Is Dallas Goedert on the receiving end of that many targets, but are they bigger plays than what we've seen recently? Still a lot of question marks. And Gerald Everett at number 10 has a ton of upside going against Denver. Is he a little bit riskier than some of the guys listed after him? Absolutely, but he should still see a fair amount of targets, and going up against a Denver defense that keeps allowing fantasy points to every tight end that they face, absolutely Gerald Everett could be in for a big week, especially if you need him as a streaming option. Darren Waller against the LA Rams has a little bit of a higher floor than Gerald Everett, but not nearly as much ceiling. That's why I've got him one spot behind him. And Cole Kmet at number 12 may not even end up playing this week. As of this recording, has not practiced as of yet. They were sounding hopeful that maybe Cole Kmet could practice at the end of the week and potentially get on the field. Monitor that. If he doesn't play, of course he's out, and everyone just bumps up a spot. Dalton Schultz at number 13 could have a few different outcomes. As of right now, I'm going to keep him at 13 with potentially no CJ Stroud. But if CJ Stroud ends up playing, I absolutely would be willing to go as high as number 9 with Dalton Schultz in my rankings this week. Logan Thomas going up against San Francisco doesn't have a ton of upside, but Jacoby Brissett is going to absolutely target the crap out of him, I believe. When Jacoby Brissett was in Cleveland last year, he was targeting the crap out of David Njoku to begin the season. Let's hope he keeps that up, and he's looking towards Logan Thomas quite a bit in a matchup where they're going to have to throw it. Kyle Pitts at number 15 going up against Chicago. Not the best upside in the world, but he has touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 games. Just prepared to get hurt once again. Juwan Johnson has scored touchdowns in back-to-back games, and now he's getting a Tampa Bay defense that loves to allow touchdowns to the tight end position. Go ahead and lock in Juwan Johnson as a streamer this week if you're shooting for upside. Chigioco, really the same thing. First touchdown of the season this past week, even if it was a trick play from Derrick Henry. But Houston, one of the worst defenses in the league at allowing fantasy points to the tight end position. And Tucker Kraft has been pretty solid for Green Bay down the stretch here. Going up against Minnesota, not a ton of upside because it is a tougher matchup, but could see a fair amount of targets. And headliners, you might be asking me about like Taysom Hill. No, I'm not playing Taysom Hill this week. Absolutely not. The dude hasn't even been inside the top 20 tight ends the last 2 weeks. I'm not even touching that. I would much rather play Juwan Johnson in this matchup. And you might be asking about Hunter Henry. As of now, he's still limited in practice. If he does end up playing this week, he would find his way into my top 18 tight ends, even if it would be towards the very bottom. But that's going to be it for the tight end rankings this week. Short, sweet, to the point, not a whole lot to talk about. We have some guys with really good matchups. We have some guys that will get a decent amount of volume, but don't have the ceiling because the matchup isn't that good. What you need to do this week, honestly, if you have one of the top tight ends, lock in your safest option. If you don't, then go for broke, because at the tight end position, that's going to be your best case scenario. So if you don't have somebody that you trust, throwing in a high upside play like Juwan Johnson or Gerald Everett, that's the way to go. But Headliner Nation, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Good luck this week. Good luck in Thursday Night Football. And I'll see you all on the live show Saturday afternoon. Peace out. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.